If you're trying to take your business to the next level or to start manifesting the abundance in your business that you want, you need to listen to this episode from start to end. There are so many insights from high-performance coach Kimberly Spencer, and maybe some things like success, manifestation, and strategy are terms often repeated and maybe overused. But this woman talks from her own experience and she walks the talk. She shared with us part of her struggles after being bought out of a partnership, deciding to start her own business and what it took to expand it to a pro level. With her, we talk about challenges and changes, what is productive procrastination, things that are crucial for manifestation to happen, how success can be a crappy teacher, the importance of recognizing one's own successful strategy to not deviate from one's commitment to oneself, how to switch from an away from strategy to a toward strategy, a process on how to find what you want, courage and its role in the manifestation and achievement of goals. What is the zone of genius and 3 things that can lead you to success, whatever your definition is. What do we need to do to achieve more freedom? She also shared with us some of the struggles of high achievers, and we also talk about how to manage a business as a mother. Kimberly is a wealth of wisdom and has great insight and tips. So let's get started. Have you ever wondered what makes people capable of creating changes that impact their lives and the world around them? What is their way of thinking, their mentality, their patterns, their perceptions of the world, their reactions to different life events? What influences them? My name is Cristina Puyol, and I invite you to join me in this adventure where we will explore together the mind of change makers. Today, I have with me a certified high-performance coach, best-selling writer, health junkie, freedom lover, wife, mama, unsinkable optimist. And when you read her curriculum, you wonder what she hasn't accomplished or done. From co-writing movies, competing and winning a whole bunch of Miss titles, acted in London, became a certified Pilates instructor, was named Pilates Pro by Oxygen magazine, and started her own studio, Fitness with Kim, for 10 years, ran also 4 full marathons, and so much more. But for every inch of career success she got, she took 2 steps back, self-sabotage, or never felt enough until she discovered, well, let's hear it directly from her. So help me in welcoming Kimberly Spencer. Hi, Kimberly.
Christina, thank you so much for having me, for inviting me on. I am so honored to be here. This is going to be so much fun.
Yeah, and I was reading everything that you do, and I'm like, oh my God, this woman has done it all. So tell us a little bit about, this is the Change Maker's Mind podcast. So a little bit of your changes, your transitions from one career to another one, and how was that for you?
Oh my gosh, what change haven't I?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, which one should I ask? But maybe there's one that strikes more, that you felt like this was the biggest change.
I mean, honestly, I think the biggest change was when I decided to turn pro in my present business, because prior to 2016, I had always been, actually prior to about 2014, I'd always been very audacious with my career. If I wanted something, I would go for it. I was, straight out of high school, networking with people, with executives in film and TV to get, movies produced. And so I was always very audacious. I remember having some friends when I was about 17, 18 years old, and they're like, wait, you just like go up and talk to people and ask them like for what you want. And they thought that this was like the craziest thing. I was like, yeah, I go meet producers and all that. So I was very audacious with that. It got me my first feature film as a writer. It got me started as a Pilates instructor and allowed me to build a studio. It got me an opportunity to become a partner in an e-commerce company. And it was after that e-commerce company, because through that business, I learned so much because I'd never been in a partnership before. And 2 years into that relationship and into that business, my business partner said he wanted to buy me out. And everything that I thought I had handled, all the changes of my own mindset in that I'd struggled with body image. I'd struggled with like choosing some poor relationship choices. I had, so I'd had all my insecurities and imposter syndromes in those areas, but never in my career. Well, fast forward to going through this buyout process 3 months before I'm supposed to get married to my most amazing husband of now 10 years, that I was suddenly faced with professional men giving me every insecurity that I've ever had about myself. I'm too young, I'm too feminine, I'm too uneducated, I'm too sparkly, I'm too audacious, I'm a fraud. Like all of these fears, deep-seated fears. And even though we signed the buyout agreement 3 weeks before I got married, got married, went off on my honeymoon for 6 weeks in Italy, was wondering like, what the heck do I do when I get back? And had the idea for my business right then and there, because I was brainstorming with my husband because I'd had all these creative passions and pursuits, and I wanted to create a brand and a business that really supported each other. And that's when I leaped off the couch after probably way too many espressos. And I said, crown yourself. And my husband's like, what's that? And I was like, I don't know, but that's the name of my company. That's what I'm going to do. And it's like kind of like Marie Forleo. And, it's going to help people in this holistic way. But I had no idea what I was doing. I did know that I needed to buy a domain name and some lights and equipment. And I spent about a year and a half making no money in my business, in this shame spiral of self-doubt, which manifested as what I lovingly call productive procrastination, which is where you're doing all of the activities except for the one activity that actually makes the big difference. So in my case for business, it was making sales. I was so deeply scared of getting rejected. And that's when about a year and a half into that, at 2016, the biggest change that I had was I found out I was pregnant. And I realized that through that year and a half, who I'd become incredibly negative, super cynical, blaming everyone and their dog for anything and not taking full responsibility for my life. I was deeply in debt. And I was in the space where I constantly, every day was filled with blame, shame, and complaining. And when I found out I was pregnant, I had made a commitment to myself when I was about 17, 18 years old. Back when I was a teenager, I was struggling with bulimia. I was dealing with healing a lot of revelations about abuse that I had had as a child, growing up with an addict for a father. And our unconscious minds don't present us with things until we're ready. Like they repress memories until we're actually ready to deal with them. And so it was in that time of healing when I was a teenager that I made the commitment. I said, I am committed for at least 2 years that I will never get pregnant. I will not have children. I will not have children until I sort my stuff out, because the title of mom, I valued more than CEO, than president, than founder. And that was so in 2016, when I found out mom, that was the title that I was going to have, I was like, oh crap. I got a 9-month deadline now to get this sorted. And that was when I immediately enrolled in NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnosis, because I knew it was a mindset issue. That was one piece. And I knew I could overcome it because I'd recovered from bulimia with no psychological or medical intervention. So I knew it was a mindset shift. And it was at the core of it, it was an identity shift. And so it was through going through those trainings and then implementing, because this is a big piece with manifestation, is you can do all the meditations and hypnosises and all that, but unless you take the work and take it into your daily practice of what you're doing and facing those fears on a daily basis and moving forward with acts of courage, nothing really happens. So then I started putting myself out there as a coach, getting rejected, learning sales again. And that was when I really started to have the most massive change. And I've been able to grow a company and raise 2 children now and travel all around the world. And we just got back from living 2 years abroad in Australia. And it's been such a beautiful journey. But I would say that was probably the most pivotal change that I experienced.
I think it's beautiful that you share that, because sometimes we feel that because we've been successful in some areas, then it's just going to be like that for the rest of our life in all of the areas of our lives, And so the fact that you were so successful, for a bunch of time, and then you faced like, okay, now I'm starting from zero again, and all these doubts come out, and the time to face some of your past also came out, is beautiful, because I feel some people feel like, how can I be here, having all these fears when I've done so much, and feel even worse than what you feel, So I think it's nice
Yeah.
to share that. Yeah.
Yes. I forget my mentor, James Wedmore. He has always said success is a crappy teacher, because it's from our failures and from our foibles and from the challenges that we actually learn. So when something comes really easy for us, like for me, growing up, entrepreneurship came very easy. Like, even though I had an addict for a father, he was a highly functioning addict who, over the course of 30 years, built a multi-million-dollar company.
Yeah.
All stone. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and so I remember thinking, like, if he could do that in 30 years, what could I do in 10 and sober? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not buying into the addictive paradigm.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge piece that you mentioned, Christina, about the when you've had success in the past. And I've worked with leaders now for the past 6 years, coaching them. And I found that so often when we achieve success at some level and we get something, it's very easy to put that success on a pedestal. I mean, I did this back when I had my first 10K month as a coach. I had, because for some reason, as I'm sure you've seen on the interwebs, like having a 10K month is like you've achieved something as a coach. So I remember when I had it that first year, and I put it up on such a pedestal that the next month my income dropped drastically. And then the following next month, it again, not another 10K month. It was like less than 1,000. I was like, what the heck?
Yeah.
And it was because I had put that 10K month up on a pedestal, where pedestals are a tricky thing, right? It's not a very stable surface. I live in Southern California. We have earthquakes. Like, pedestals get knocked down. And so when you put your success up on a pedestal, they're also harder to climb. It's also harder for you to see the path of, like, the tools, the tactics, the strategies that actually led you to that place, that pinnacle, rather than a pedestal. And when you can see, okay, well, this, and this action were what led me to achieving, receiving this, then you just repeat that process. But if you put it up on a pedestal, and I've seen this not just with coaches, but in every industry, where, if I'm working with like a entertainment executive and I see that they've produced like a really successful show and gotten tons of awards, and then suddenly, like, the next show that they produce is a flop, and that ends up being so soul crushing for their identity and their ego. And it's because when they look at, okay, well, this, and this, what was the formula that I had that actually generated the success? Because so often we'll do that with our failures if we're self-aware, but we won't always do that with our successes. And success really does leave some pretty epic clues if you choose to look at them and take the success off the pedestal and look at what got you to the pinnacle.
Yeah, I think that's so important to have a reminder that you did these steps to get here. Now, if you want to get in there, you need to do the same steps or something similar, and don't forget what got you there. And I think also some people, they forget what was their initial definition of success. So it might not mean, in your case, 10,000, but having like the 3 spectacular clients that you had. And then you kind of raise that 10,000 to something else, and you add things, and then you never get there, and then if it's pushing you to do your goals, great. But if it's crashing you, then it's not a good way to deal with success.
Completely agree. Yeah. Success is such an interesting concept, because I've seen exactly what you just explained, of like, you instead of it being like a 10K month, which, let's say, for example, that's like an external thing, especially in my industry, in the coaching industry, it's an external thing that somehow that gives you validation and accreditation as a coach.
Yeah.
But if that doesn't resonate with you externally, it's going to get funky energy mix because it's not actually coming from you through you. But if what's serving through you is actually like, oh my gosh, I really want to just help those 3 people. I want to serve instead of like making the 10K a month. Because that was a huge lesson for me, because I'd never focused on my money mindset until like, and I'd had successful businesses for the past decade, like, but money mindset for some reason in the coaching space, that was a thing. And suddenly I started deep uncovering and doing the work. And the more I focused on money mindset and the more I focused on manifesting money just for me, the less successful I was, because it was my success strategy subconsciously is not about making money. Like, I love making money. It's like, I think it's great. I truly believe that when good-hearted, mission-minded leaders make more money, that's how we make more of an impact. And we have to make the income in order to make the impact. But in the past, I'd never focused on making money. I'd focused on serving people. I focused relentlessly on sharing a skill set, a tool set, and a process that actually had to help transform me and that could help other people. It wasn't about like, let me see how much money I make and making it all about me. Not saying that that's wrong or good or bad. I'm just saying that's not my personal success strategy. And I think giving yourself permission to recognize, is this a strategy that you're seeing play out in your industry, or is this your actual own success strategy at how you actually show up successfully? So that's one piece. And then the second piece that you mentioned, Christina, that I just absolutely love is, having that goal and making it so that like you never actually achieve that goal. So I'm working with one client and her goal was to have a 10K a month. And I was like, great, let's do it. We can totally do this. And she got her first $2,000 client. And after getting her first $2,000 client, she's like, well, I don't know if I really want 5 clients. And I said, I don't care personally, because it's not me personally invested, but I said, you made a commitment to yourself to have a 10K month. Don't care where the money comes from, but look at the strategies. You said you want to be a consultant. You want to generate a 10K month, and that means 5 clients at 2,000 per month. And she's like, well, I don't know, if it's going to be so much work. And I said, how much work is it actually going to be? Like, how much work are you actually putting in right now with your one client? And she assessed it, but in her mind, she had made it so working with 5 clients consistently was this huge thing. It was going to overwhelm her. So she got to like, it's kind of like in, if you've ever done a fundraiser and you have that little thermometer that you're like getting to that peak and you see that like, you're like, oh, I get a little too hot. And so you stop before you even achieve the goal. And I said, this is not about the goal, because the thing is not about the thing. I said, this is about you keeping a commitment to yourself. I said, whether it's 5 clients or not, what would happen if you actually kept the commitment to yourself, worked with those 5, serve them epically, and then you realize, I don't really want to do 5 clients a month, and I don't really want to, 10K months, not my thing, like maybe 100K, but like once keep the commitment that you make to yourself to show up for yourself and your goal. So many people put the cart before the horse after they achieve a little micro amount of their goal. And then because they had the horse before the cart, they achieve a couple bits of success on the step to actually achieving the full width and breadth and mountain of that goal. But the problem is that because they haven't, because they switched around their strategy like a quarter of the way through. And so because they switch around their strategy and they put the cart before the horse, then suddenly it seems like this huge challenge to actually achieve the rest of it. When if you think back, probably the way that you got those first sales or those first pieces or those increments to your goal were probably from a space of ease, from a space of I'm going to figure it out. And then you just switch your subconscious success strategy. So that's why understanding the success of how you got those little micro successes to the major macro success of the goal and allowing for that to be. And really letting that be a teacher.
I think sometimes the changes, like you were saying before, when you have failures, you learn a lot. But to make a change when things are good, or you think is good, your mind is tricking you to thinking it's okay. I think that's a hard place, because you don't have anybody kicking your butt, to make a change and to really have something, drastically change in your life. So sometimes in that sense, success can blind you from taking the steps to, or can take your courage away, or not giving you the courage enough to make the step to change. Don't you think so?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It comes down to like subconsciously, do you have a toward or away from strategy? So a lot of times when people leave a career to start their own business, they're focused on an away from strategy. I don't want to be like corporate. I don't want to have a nasty boss. I want freedom. But for the most part, I've seen typically it's about an 80% away from and like a 20% toward. I want freedom. I want joy. I want fulfillment. But I really don't want to be like this. I don't want the boss. I don't want the structure. I don't want the politics, all of that. And the problem is that you can only, like, a toward strategy is like looking out on a dashboard of your car and driving straight toward where you want to go. Away from, I mean, how successful are you if you hit the gas pedal while looking in the rearview mirror to drive forward, looking at what's behind you?
Yeah, that's true.
You're going to crash.
Yeah.
And that's what happens with self-sabotage and an away from motivation strategy. So that's what happens when somebody achieves a certain goal, like they achieve like a fraction of their goal or a percentage of their goal. And then their strategy that got them there was they were looking in the rearview mirror. And so suddenly they need to shift their gaze on moving toward what they want. Because a lot of times, especially if it's a monetary goal, it's like, I just need to make $2,000 or $5,000 to cover my bills. Great. So you make that amount, you manifest that amount, you receive that amount from clients or whatever work that you're doing. And then suddenly you achieve that. And now you're at a place where all is good. Like, you don't really have to make more, but you've made the commitment and the goal to want to make more. So how do you shift? You start looking at what it is that you want and why it's actually absolutely necessary that you achieve that.
But it's true that more people know what they don't want than what they want.
Yes.
So how is the process? How do you help people to figure out what they want?
Yeah. So a great exercise is, because so many people are clear on what they don't want, is just write it down. Like, take a journal and on the left side, write everything you don't want. You don't want the crappy boss. You don't want to be broke. You don't want and I've had clients do this, whether it's for finances, for their business, for personal relationships, for their body. I don't want to be fat. Like, I don't want to be over, 200 pounds, all of those things of what they don't want. Great. Write them all down, list them out. And then once that you're cleansed in a way of all the don't wants, just on the other side of the journal, just map across what is the opposite of what I don't want. So I don't want to be broke. Well, I want to be financially free. Well, what specifically is financially free? Is that $5,000 a month? Is that $50,000 a month? Is that like what would financial freedom cost you? And then, I don't want to be fat. Well, what is the opposite of that? You want to be fit, trim, healthy, strong, vibrant. Most people, it's not necessarily about the thing. It's about what the feeling that it is that they want to pursue. So it's not about the actual goal. It's like, especially for monetary goals or body goals, what is that feeling that you believe that having that will allow you to have? Because then you get to address it. Once you map across, what is the exact opposite of what it is that you don't want? You have a list of what you want. Now, then once you have the list of what you want, what you want, how would that make you feel? What would that stir inside of you? How would you wake up on a daily basis if you already had it? And this is how I healed myself of 10 years of bulimia. I did this exact process. And for me, I would wake up feeling confident and strong. And I would be able to feel okay being inside of my body instead of being so dissociated. And I would feel nurtured by food. Like those are the pieces for me that really suddenly I was like, okay, well, now how do I chase that feeling? How do I start living into those feelings? It was the same with my business. When instead of thinking of the money, because thinking of I just want to make money just made me feel ick. It made me feel greedy. It made me feel it didn't make me feel good. And so I looked at what in the past had allowed me to feel really good and make money. And for me, that was being able to be of epic service, sharing a process that really served others and that had proven results. So because of that, that's why I just started. And then I looked at, okay, now I'm going to lean into that. So instead of chasing this external feeling of I need to hit this amount or this amount to be considered successful in my industry, I said, I'm just going to do what I've always done and focus on my own subconscious success strategy and look at what was I feeling or doing in the past that had made me successful in this way and successfully feel this way on a daily basis. And a part of that came down to keeping my own commitments to myself, of showing up when I didn't feel like it. And so once you get what you don't want, you get what you want, then ask yourself some questions about how will it feel when you have what you want? And then how can you start embodying those feelings today? Like what would make you feel free? And so, for example, one of my clients, in fact, most of my clients, their goal is freedom, to have to feel free, and not just freedom like financially, but freedom to feel fully expressed, to have meaningful experiences, to be able to travel, like those feelings. And so when they start to lean into those feelings, I said, well, how often are you traveling? Oh, I can't go on vacation right now. I don't have the money. Okay, well, do you live, within 20 miles of a new coffee shop? Like something new, something different, because that's the fun of travel. So doesn't mean you have to go to Switzerland. You don't have to take a plane. How can you travel in your own hometown to a new place, to have a new experience, to try something new? And then that will start to stimulate those ideas. So you're not spending $4,500 on like a plane flight, trip, cruise, whatnot, but you may spend like $45 on going out and going go-karting or doing some new experience that allows you to, and doing that in the middle of the day, because that's what helps you feel free. So, or maybe it's, writing a post. If writing a post that you get to feel fully expressed in, and choosing to have the courage then to share it, because courage really is such a beautiful vibration, which it literally is a measurable emotional vibration that is the tipping point into peace, love, joy, acceptance, like all those higher vibe emotions. Courage is the tipping point that actually will tip you over into that. Anything below courage is like shame, guilt, anger. Anger can be a motivator, but it's actually courage that is what tips the scale into the higher vibrations. If you've heard of the term like raising your vibe, it is through acts of courage that actually gets transmuted. And so maybe it's courage to actually fully express yourself. Like one of my clients, I gave her the task. She wanted to do professional speaking. And I said, great, you're going to have the courage to show up every day on Instagram, every day. And she was like, oh, I don't know what people think of me. I was like, well, if you're worried about that, then standing in front of a room of 5,000 people ain't going to happen. So let's use what you got, get your reps in, and get the practice of courage in, because it's a practice. It's not perfection, and it's going to be clunky and feel awkward, and you're not going to know how it's received. And then people might think you're weird. And it's not about that. It's about you choosing to have the courage to do the thing that scares you the most. Like when I first found out I was pregnant, the thing that I had to have the courage was investing in a process, investing in getting certified in NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnosis. I had to have the courage to do that because I was already in debt. And my gut said, yes, this is right. This is aligned. This is what needs to happen. And I was like, okay, let's add another $5,000 to the 40K of debt that I already had. And which, by the way, got completely paid off.
Nice.
And it was once I got certified in that, I had to have the courage to then share it, to share the process, to put myself out there, to have sales conversations, to get rejected, to get turned down. And like now, man, we get rejections or like just avoidance on a daily basis, multiple times a day. But back then, just making that one phone call or sending that one email was like such a giant act of courage because it scared the crap out of me. And yet that's how I got my first client. And then it grew from there. But it came because I had to understand what was that next step, that next act of courage that I had to do that would allow me then to feel the way that the being of who I wanted to be and what I wanted to be, that to come through.
Yeah. I love how you put it, that is the act of courage. And I put it like voting for oneself, like you're voting for your future self, constantly. Every time you take an action, it doesn't matter the size. Sometimes it's a very small step, sometimes it's a huge step, but it's all a step forward. And it's telling yourself that you trust yourself, that you believe in yourself, and that you're moving forward. But I like that of saying, what act of courage are you gonna do today, towards the identity that you want to have. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that you say, it's voting for your future self. So I have a super powerful exercise that I walk my clients through, where basically you're having a conversation with your future self. And in that exercise, I always ask the question, would your future self fire you for the quantity and quality of your current output?
Nice. I love that.
And so often the face on every single person that I've ever posed that question to, they're like, oh crap.
I love it. It's a great question. Yeah.
Because once you realize like, oh my gosh, because we're so much human beings will so more often than not be much more easily inclined to do things for other people rather than for themselves.
Yeah.
And so you are beholden then to your future self. She is your boss. And think of her in that way. And then it's not you who's doing it. You're doing it for her because you have to become her, because she's kind of grooming you for her role, because she's got other stuff to do. Like she's got bigger mountains to climb. And so when you can think of it like that, it changes your perspective to it being just about you and kind of being about where you're stuck and like, I don't feel like it today. Because so often I'll hear from clients, especially for those who are starting businesses, like their output, I'm like, girl, you worked in corporate. Like, would this amount of results actually be anywhere near acceptable? and so often they're like, oh yeah, it's not, because they're chasing freedom, but they lack the discipline and the structure. And with even with any amount of freedom, the more freedom that you want, it's actually counterintuitive, but the more discipline and structure you're going to have. Like maybe the discipline is not necessarily every day you have at the same time, you write your posts and you write your content, but you do get out content every damn day. Because one of my mentors who I just love following on Instagram, the content queen, she had this epic post that I had to share it, because she said, imagine a neurosurgeon saying, I don't really feel like going to school every day, but I deserve to be a neurosurgeon in 5 years. It's the same as, I don't want to post content every day, but I want to be a massive influencer with a huge following. Ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
Ain't gonna happen. So we have to have the courage to also have the discipline and the diligence to continue taking those daily steps forward to move toward where we want to go.
Yeah, it's so true. And I love that example so much.
Right?
Yeah,
I saw that and I was like, oh, Rebecca, the content queen. I just like, that was amazing. Amazing. I was high-fiving myself.
Yeah, I remember when I switched from engineering to I went from engineering to being a dance instructor, and I could not believe how little I was accomplishing every day comparing to my engineering career. I'm like, I was doing like, and I was doing the engineering and the dancing, and then I quit the engineering, and my days were gone. I'm like, what? I used to do like my 10-hour job, and then teaching, and then this, and so you really, like you're saying, you really have to be disciplined, because otherwise time flies and you've done nothing. And so if you want freedom, discipline goes with it, and people see it as opposites, and it's not, so it's so true. It's so true. So important to raise that
Yeah, and
awareness again and again.
yeah, it doesn't have to be a rigidity either. Like discipline can be fun and flowy and it can come through you, but it's a discipline of choosing to show up every dang day. And I mean, that was what made me very successful as a Pilates instructor, and was one of my first lessons in business. And 19 years old, I started out as a freelance instructor, and I was in the studio and I said, yeah, I just book me, like have me in there every day. Like every day, 6 days a week, I was in there. I always say Sundays, but 6 days a week. People saw me. People saw my face. They interacted with me, whether they were a client or not. And then eventually, within a year, I became the highest paid, youngest, and most fully booked instructor at that studio. And it was because I had the courage and the discipline to show up every day, whether I had clients or not, and I was showing up. And we have lost that to a degree, or that perception, because we think, oh, in this online space, everything is also readily available. I have content up the wazoo. I wouldn't have to create content, technically at all for the next year if I wanted to. But there's a discipline and a practice of showing up and of continually showing up in the spaces where your ideal customer is. And to do that and be committed to that, it's a huge part of it. I mean, if you look at any multi-billion-dollar national company or international company, they're posting every day. But you can't do like one time, like you do one time a week and expect to have the same multi-billion-dollar results. Probably not going to work.
Yeah. And in this business of coaching now, there's so many people getting into it, and coaching, it's a very wide term that is used now in every possible aspect. Everybody's a coach, but there are so many people that are not making ends meet, even in this business. And what is your experience? Why you think that is? Besides they're not posting every day. Beside that,
they're not making offers. Like really, they don't have the discipline in making offers. So posting every day is one thing, but posting with a call to action, reaching out to make big asks. I would say that that's really the big thing, is that people are not making big enough asks. And one of my favorite quotes is from Oprah. And she says, in life, you get what you have the courage to ask for. And so they're not asking for a higher price. They're not asking for, payment in full. They're not asking for payment up front. They are, a lot of times people are typically like tiptoeing around, like, would you kind of maybe pay? And then, oh, okay, we'll do, a payment plan, but you don't have to pay me. Like they aren't holding their structural boundaries of what they will and will not tolerate. And then on top of it, making those asks of their audience, asking to share their content, asking to put themselves out there, making that ask of their audience on their emails. So what I've seen is that it's that choosing to have the courage to make an ask, and look at how many daily asks that you can take. And I started tracking this myself years ago. And it was in one of my courses that my mom actually chose to take, and she's like, oh my gosh, like you track all that? And I said, well, yes, my tracking system is just different than hers. But I told her, I said, Mom, you may not have the same tracking system that I have, but you do track your sales, you do track your offers, you do track your inbound calls. So I mean, because I was like, you have built a multi-million dollar business. So she saw my structure and thought, oh, this is a different thing. No, it's not. There's still every person who has a $1 million plus business that I have talked to, they all in some way track their sales, they track their offers, they track their leads. And that's typically the main thing that most coaches aren't doing as a discipline, is tracking their leads, tracking their sales, tracking their offers, or the amount of offers made, or tracking their asks. And sometimes that ask could be asking a friend for a referral, or asking somebody to be a power partner. Like I have tons of power partners where we have an exchange of either ideas, or we make mutual referrals because their service serves the same audience as mine, but we just give different services. But it's in making those big, bold, courageous asks that's how you really start to move the needle.
Mm-hmm. And how do you manage to navigate all of these being a mother? Because that's, you have your own company, and then, that's another business. So, yeah.
It is. So I am very blessed with an amazing partner. My husband is so awesome. And as my business over specifically the past 3 years, is when we were in Australia, we knew that we'd be going down because it was the pandemic and we were over there. And my husband's career is basically located in Los Angeles, or was, because he's a voice actor. And so I said, we're going to be going down to a one income household. And he was like, okay. And I said, I can take that on. My business can totally do that and I can scale, but I'm going to need a lot more help with the kids. And so he definitely stepped up, showed up. He's an amazing father. And I have that. I don't know how single mothers do it. Like, you are goddesses, in my opinion. If you are a single mom listening to this, like, you are an absolute goddess.
Yeah.
And for me as a mother with a support system, I lean in and make asks of my support system. Like, now we have my mom with us and she is helping take care of the kids, and then I hire, if my mom is working on something, and my husband has a job, then I will hire somebody to watch my kids for a certain amount of time, because I have my certain things that are my non-negotiables with my kids. Like, we always will spend time every day playing, to a degree. Like, it may be 10 minutes, it may be an hour, but I always make sure that I have quality time with my kids. I will also say this because this is something that I heard from a podcast. It was Jim Fortin, and he was interviewing, gosh, I'm forgetting her name, but she's one of the top influencers and businesswomen on LinkedIn. And she runs a PR company out of Dallas. And she said that the days that I'm successful as a CEO and the days that I'm like rocking it as a mom are at the same time, are very few and far between. So like today, I already know that the way my schedule is structured, it's going to be a very successful CEO day. I know that I also have structured with my kids. My husband's going to be watching them for the majority of the morning, and then we'll shift. And in the afternoon, I always cut off my day at about, so I can take my sons to their activities, because that's, for me, is like, I am the cheerleader, the champion on the sidelines. I always love taking them to their activities and seeing them grow and be in that space. But it comes down to boundaries and having the courage, again, to make asks that sometimes are uncomfortable. And sometimes, especially as a mother, like, there can be so much shame and guilt and judgment from others as far as like how you're doing it. And I mean, I believe that we can have it all if we choose not to do it all.
Yeah. I love that sentence. Yeah. Because so much, I hear like guys saying, or other people saying, oh, the father is babysitting. I'm like, no, he's not. He's the father. He's not a babysitter. He has to pitch in the same way. And
yeah, he's fathering.
Exactly. He's not babysitting. Because then what? Mothers are babysitting too. Then, it sounds weird. Yeah. And I think many women that are, high achievers and have kids, they want to do it all. And so it's important, like you're saying, to know when to ask for help and not feel guilty about it, regardless of judgment outside, because I know there's a lot of judgment. Regardless of what you do, there's going to be judgment. So just, get over it and just do it the way that you want to do it. So, yeah.
You do it in the way that works for you. Yeah. It's like you find, and if it's not working, you'll know by what it feels right and what feels like, I'm spending too much time, energy, money, effort on this area of my business. Is this actually necessary, or is this moving forward? Like, I have gotten over the course of both having two children, like as I watched my son grow, my first one is like literally grown up with my business. And my second one is 1 year old. And I have gotten much more specific and diligent with like, what are the things that are in my zone of genius that only I can do? Like for me, only I can show up for podcast interviews. And now, is that ultimately true? Could I hire a team down the road who are a part of our mission? And yes, absolutely, 100%. Like one of my clients in our podcasting agency, one of her employees does half the podcasts that she does because her employee just is so deeply attached to the mission and has had kids go through her program and loves it. So that is possible. But do I know what is in my zone of genius? Yes, absolutely. And when you can decide and look at what is in your zone of genius, what is that thing that only you can do, that you do so well? And maybe it's not that only you can do it, like, because I can certainly hire somebody to do copywriting, and I did hire somebody to do some copywriting for us, but only I can source a message through me and put it into the vessel that is my business. And I love doing that. And it's something that energizes me, and it's something that deeply fulfills me. And so I look at what are the activities in my zone of genius, and you'll know what those activities are because typically we shy away from those activities because we were taught and programmed from childhood that those things either aren't realistic, or those things don't make money, or those things like aren't really the drivers. So like a big thing for me is building beautiful, amazing relationships. And that's a huge piece of what I do as a CEO. And from building beautiful, amazing relationships, though, most people are like, wait, you're going out to lunch? Like, you're just going out to lunch. And I'm like, no. I'm building a relationship, or being on a podcast interview, or having conversations. Like those pieces are about building the relationships. And it's from those relationships that root in a business into greater possibility. But so often we won't spend the time because either we don't want to get rejected, or we don't want it to go anywhere, or we maybe are taking on too many relationships that aren't really like qualified, people who aren't really qualified or solid candidates for our time or energy or effort or whatnot, or we don't have solid boundaries as to like who we want to be spending our time with versus like, we'll just spend our time with everybody. So it's about having boundaries, knowing what your zone of genius is, and then delegating that which is not fully in your zone of genius. Like I know for me, my zone of genius as a parent is not sitting down with my son and, going through his homeschool. Not at all. Like I can, but I see myself, I'm like, I just want to give an answer. Like, I just want, okay, all right, got to coach him through this. Okay. Like, you can focus. So that's the whole process. That's not me. I know my zone of genius is very much in a space of play, being a kinesthete, taking him outside, kicking the ball around, allowing him, holding space to have like really beautiful, like deep conversations. Like, just last night I was having a conversation with my son about death and life and
wow. Yeah, that's deep.
Well, the kid has gone through we lost 3 family members in the course of 1 year. And
wow.
so
Sorry.
He's really processing that, but I get to hold space and have that conversation with him. I didn't expect to have conversations about death at 5.
Oh yeah.
But just to support him in allowing him to process those pieces. And that's where I really shine. The same is true as in business. I know what my zone of genius is. It's in creation, connection, and challenging. Like coaching, where that could be challenging through my content, challenging through in a coaching session, challenging somebody's belief systems. But those are my 3. And when you can find out what your 3 things that you do so well that also make you feel so good, and you could do them for free, like they literally light your soul on fire. You feel so brave, so courageous, so bold. It's not easy necessarily. You may still face fears, but when you face it, you're like, when I face a blank page that's like with a cursor blinking at me, I'm like, okay, challenge accepted. Let's get some words out. But it comes down to choosing to lean into that courage again. And so what do you have the courage to lean into? Because otherwise, when we focus on the other zones, we have our zone of genius, we have our zone of excellence, which is typically the one that we get most trapped into because it's the things that we do really well, but they don't light our souls on fire. Like, for example, like when I first started coaching, I doubted myself as a coach. So I would also build my clients' web pages. I could do it, but after a weekend of building their website, I would feel completely drained. And I could do it. My clients loved it. They looked great. They just it didn't resonate with my soul. So it was zone of excellence. I would get praised for it, but it wouldn't make me energized. And then we have our zone of competence, which are all those things that we can do, but we just really don't want to do. Like maybe it's doing the dishes. Like I delegate that to my husband. And I delegate the cooking to my husband. Yeah. My husband does all the cooking. He's a chef. He got certified in Australia. Like I delegate the cooking because my son asked me to stop burning toast. So
at 5.
At 5. Yeah. I know my son.
You already got to figure out mom is not the one.
Mom is not the one. I can pour milk into a glass. You got it. But
cereal with milk.
Yeah. The best thing I can do is reheat coffee. So.
That's hilarious. Yeah, it's interesting because I was teaching this weekend something about career path and all that stuff, and we were talking about the ikigai, where you talk about the zone of what you love and what you're good at and what the world needs and what you can be paid off, and the intersection of what you love and what you're good at is passion, and they always talk about passion, but I think sometimes there's one thing is that some things you have to lean into, but sometimes when things are too easy, you don't give it value too, right? Don't you think so? That some people don't value what comes really easy to them because it's so easy and they don't even see it, And so I think that's another thing to take into account. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And that's such a powerful perspective, because we're taught like also not to value it, like especially if it comes easy, because the value of hard work and things coming hard is praise, especially in America. And when those things come easy for us, it's we have to learn to value it. Like I had to learn to value writing and words because it just came really easily for me. And that's my gift. Math, not so much. Yeah. But like I had to and there were also the things that as a CEO, you have to learn. Like there will be things that are not in your ikigai that you do need to learn, like finance, like looking at a P&L statement, like being able to understand the trajectory of where your numbers are going. Like there are those things that you do need to look up and where you need to delegate and how to future pace and like who do you need to start hiring. And maybe those things are not skill sets that you're used to now, but they will be skill sets that will add to so much of what you're building, because no empire was built by oneself.
No, exactly. Yeah. And in all these high achievers that you work with, what are some common struggles that they have?
I would say perfectionism. And buying into a story that they write on their own of overwhelm and the biggest one, perfectionism, overwhelm, but really overwhelm is a choice, and it's buying into a story of overwhelm because you're allowing yourself to go and like I'm so overwhelmed, because there's again, it's something that we can get acknowledgement for in society. We praise and have been praised for being busy. Like nobody wants to be like, yeah, I was lazy today.
Yeah.
Not
at that level, yeah.
But being busy, even if you're not purposeful, being busy is praised. And so these things, they do get us acknowledgement in some way. And so we have to shift our rewiring and who we're surrounding ourselves with so that we no longer allow for ourselves to get acknowledgement for being busy with meaningless, purposeless work. Because there's a big difference between being busy and purposeful. And then the last one is really shifting your vision from fear to faith, shifting that motivation strategy from away from to toward. Like, where are you moving? Because once you get to a level of comfort in your business where you got money coming in, you're no longer worried about paying the bills. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is solved.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you got to look at faith, vision, and really leaning farther into your purpose and into courage, because that piece is not really taught.
Mm-hmm.
We're taught survival mode. We're biologically wired to survive, but faith and vision, that's practice.
Wow, there's so much into this conversation, but we've already gone through an hour. It's just flying too fast. I want to ask you one question. What change do you want to see in the world?
I want to see an evolution of consciousness where blame is no longer the default. Banishing blame from the consciousness of our humanity, our world will be so much better when we all choose to take personal responsibility and ownership for our choices, our actions, and our results.
Wow, yeah, I vote for that. It's just, we have to start with ourselves. It's literally, yeah. Nice. Yeah. Well, I don't know if there's anything you want to share more, because I will talk for an hour with you. Make it 2 hours.
I could keep going. I just have a hard out because I got another meeting right after this.
Yeah.
So.
But I want to thank you for your time, your wisdom, for everything that you share, for your energy, and for you bring to the world. Thank you so much, Kimberly. It was great meeting you and great talking to you.
Thank you so much, Christina. It has been my honor and my pleasure. Thank you for creating this container, and for all of your listeners for listening. And if you love this conversation and want to talk more, just head on over to crownyourself.com.
Yeah, we will put all the information that, in the notes and when we post it, so everybody can reach you and find you and keep listening to all the things that you have to share.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.